So, yeah, I want to ask the question, Kiko. Dynamic posing, man. Dynamic posing. I got a very interesting comment on my collection tour, and one
Is this
guy
the
had
one you
said,
sent me?
yeah, the one guy was like, he said, "Oh, well, you critique other people's collections, say they don't have dynamic posing, but then you don't have dynamic posing." I'm like, did I say that? Maybe I did, but I don't know. Because usually, what I would say normally is, I'm not one to say, "Oh, you need more dynamic posing," because as you can tell, I don't really do that much dynamic posing. Some, if the character demands it, but short of that, I'm more of a museum character pose type guy. If I do see a pose that looks a little bit bland or unnatural, then I will say maybe we should try something a little bit different. But short of that, not really as much. So I found that it was kind of a funny comment. I thought it was interesting. But dynamic posing, Kiko, I have to ask the question. And I want to bring up, honestly, probably the best guy who even does it, and that's posing with Peter. Like posing with Peter does amazing job with his dioramas and his dynamic posing. And I have to ask the question, I'll ask the chat as well. Dynamic posing, Kiko, do we love it or do we hate it? I always get a little bit worried, bro, with any sort of figure like Spider-Man and stuff like that with the material, the longevity of that, if you put him in dynamic poses. I don't know, man. I tend to be more of a character pose guy, but that's just me, man. What do you think? Do you love dynamic posing? What's your relationship with it?
It's really going to come down to what your display looks like. If you got the room, there's Drago.
Drago, what are we, 1 hour and 3 minutes in?
1 hour and 3 minutes officially. So he always throws my train of thought on. It comes down to your display on what it looks like. If you got the room to do it, then I think it could be cool. But for Will, you are limited in space. I'm limited in space. So being able to pull this pose off right here probably isn't going to happen. So a character pose is much more likely to give a little bit of life to a figure, but also still allow for the room. Now, I know some figures like Darth Maul, like Spider-Man, they almost require you to have them doing something as opposed to just sitting there, if you want to call it that. Do I hate it? No. I mean, if you're good at it, go for it. I think the better question is, are you good at dynamic posing or not? That's the thing, because if you don't do it right, it could just look like they're floating and flying and look silly. So make sure that you find a still that you can try to duplicate it. But here's what I do hate, Will, if we want to get real problematic with things.
Yeah.
I hate the idea that you can't touch these figures or do anything with them because you're afraid they're going to turn to dust. That's my big thing, is that so many people get these figures and they are so terrified to do anything. To which I then say, maybe you do need to either go down a scale to something a little more posable, such as an action figure, Hasbro, whatever it may be, or get a statue if you still want the premium look or feel. I understand they are figures, they are articulated, you can pose them, but you do need to be careful, sure. But I think you need to have fun with it, man. You only live once. You can't just keep it locked in a cage forever. So pose that thing, have some fun, move the arm up a little bit, bend an elbow, but just be smart about it. At the end of the day, they're just things. Enjoy them the best you can, because I think a lot of people in this hobby get figures and then don't do anything with them because they're afraid of them. And I think they need to do away with that stigma. And if you are not comfortable with doing something with the figures, then maybe not get them in the first place, because they deserve to be posed to a degree. I mean, don't be reckless with them by any means, but enjoy them. Don't hate them because be like, oh my God, I dropped this thing and the wrist peg broke. I broke a wrist peg today and I couldn't be more excited, just because I get to swap out the wrist peg. It's okay. It's okay.
As long as
Everybody.
you have a replacement wrist peg.
Correct.
But
If you have the replacement.
if you don't, yeah, which I got to give a shout out to Kit from 16Kit, because I broke my Sephiroth Game Toys wrist peg and it didn't come with replacements. And then I was like, Kit, what the fuck do I do, dude? And he got me some. So luckily, and he came through and he shipped me some. It was really, really nice of him to do. So really appreciate that. But yeah, man, I don't tend to be a dynamic poser. I don't want to say I hate dynamic posing, but I will say that overall, I like the look of a character pose a little bit better. Something simple, give them a little bit of dynamism to it, make them look natural. Like if you have them just standing like a T, like a character or museum pose, I don't love that because it doesn't look natural. And then the figure doesn't look lifelike, which takes away its greatest attribute. It's lifelike,
absolutely.
realistic, screen-like accurate qualities, right? Which kind of defeats the purpose of even paying for a high-end collectible, I guess, like a hot toy, right? So I would say, yeah, you got to give some personality to it, so put some thought into the pose. But yeah, dynamic poses, they take up a lot of space generally. If you have the figure with arms out everywhere and whatever. Kiko, I'm a little bit different than you. if you have a seamless figure, I am pretty concerned about the longevity of that. Like that's something that I'm not going to keep the elbows bent long term because you're just asking for a nightmare. You just are.
But you
Like
can get replacements though, most likely.
sometimes, but like for example, like if a Game Toys Cloud or something that's very rare and expensive, like I'm just not dealing with that. But
Sure, there's
yeah.
exceptions to everything for
And
sure.
also like Thanos, for example, like it's a little bit harder to. I mean, you could get him; he's cheap, but you'd have to probably just buy a new Thanos, right? Because his arm, he's purple, so it's not like you can just replace him. You'd have to get another Thanos arm, which could be possible. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's yeah. I tend to just like simple posing that gives a character a little bit of personality, gives them something simple, but nothing too crazy. This is actually really cool what Peter has done though with the wire and Mando flying like that. That's pretty cool. It's not something I would do because I'm not really, that's not my thing, but I do think it looks dope in the walking pose. Peter just has a way of making these figures look natural in their poses. So as does Terry from Sideshow, by the way. So he's really, really great at it too. Justin's actually really good at it too. If you saw his Moon Knight poses, they were really, really strong. So yeah, and there's a lot of good poses out there in this community. But to me, man, I tend to be a character pose guy. Kiko, if you had to pick one though, you're probably a character pose guy, right?
What was the question?
Like character pose or dynamic pose, if you had to pick
Character
one.
pose for sure.
Yeah, right.
It's the subtle like head nod or
Right.
the shoulder move. I saw someone put in the comment #bend an elbow. I like that.
Yeah, bend an elbow. Yeah, that's all you got to do, really. Give it a slight bend. And also, if you have like a skin tight suit like the Spider-Man, bend a little elbow. Just don't give it a full bend long term, but give it a slight bend. You're probably fine. You're probably all right. So, yeah, I think, yeah, and Mark Attack, you are right about Nick. Nick's Collectibles. He does good with his posing too. So, yeah, thank you so much, guys, for your thoughts on that one in the chat. And of course, Mr. Kiko as well.